You're very welcome to the Irish Political Roundup with me, Roisin the Cleric.
And me, Paul Brophy. And today, Roisin, we're delighted to be joined by Adam DeRito. Adam is a Army veteran based in Colorado, and he's also the author of the DeRito Act, which Adam has spoke to us before on the Irish Political Roundup about, and we'll be speaking more. He'll be speaking more about that today. And of course, Donald Trump has put his nominees forward for appointment. There's a wide range of people being appointed to a wide range of positions, and Adam will give us his thoughts on that and much, much more. And of course, by the time this video goes out, it'll be Thanksgiving in America. So we'd like to wish all our American viewers in America, here in Ireland, and all over the world a happy Thanksgiving. So, Adam, you're very welcome to the Irish Political Roundup.
No, thanks for bringing me on, guys, again. It's always a pleasure to talk across the pond about all these important issues that connect our countries in so many different ways. So,
Absolutely, because the connections between Ireland and America are absolutely huge. They're going back centuries. But Adam, people would know you as the author of the DeRito Act, which is a piece of legislation that you've been working very, very hard on in the last couple of years to try get passed, which would help those who've been badly treated in the military in the US. So with President-elect or President, uh, incoming President Donald Trump coming in, how do you see your act going in the next little while?
well, we're very hopeful because the DeRito Act is so important. I've been working on this act since 2017 now. It takes a long time to pass a bill in Congress, but basically the nuts and bolts of it is that in the U.S. military now, it is not illegal for a commander to falsify or change mental health records in retaliation for reporting sexual assault or misconduct in the U.S. military. And because the way the judicial system currently sits under a Supreme Court case called Parker versus Levy, which states that the military is a separate society and should be treated as such, there is no judicial or executive authority superseding the U.S. military that keeps it under civilian control. And this is critically important because the civilians in the US are supposed to have control of their military. And unfortunately, over the last several years, with what we've seen with the ending of the global war on terror, the military is basically doing whatever it wants. It has had many corrupt generals and officers serving, and many service members have suffered of this, including me. The United States Air Force Academy falsified my mental health records when I reported sexual assault and harassment at the United States Air Force Academy when I was a cadet. And as a result, they spent years slandering and destroying my name. But eventually, I did get my commission back in the United States Army here recently. That's upcoming here under the new administration, and I've proven over 10 years of service now in the National Guard and the Reserve, plus a combat deployment, that everything they said against me was wrong. And unfortunately, most people do not have the financial means to fight this. I was very blessed. I worked in the energy industry. I was able to afford the lawyers, but that's not everybody. So we realized that this needs to stop. And one of the ways of forming accountability against these military officers is to ensure that they can't just be punished under the military judicial system, that they should be able to be sued or held accountable in the civilian legal system. So we already have laws that exist. They're called HIPAA laws. And in the United States, if a doctor changes your medical records or has medical malpractice, you can sue them or hold them accountable and pull their medical license. We want that same exact transparency and accountability in the U.S. military. And for the past 4 years, it's been fought against because not a single congressman, congresswoman, or senator wanted to look like they were anti-military. Because the military is put on this pedestal here in the United States that they can do no wrong, especially throughout the global war on terror. But what we saw with the disaster, with the withdrawal from Afghanistan, is we saw the level of incompetence in our military and our leaders, and it cost American service members' lives. And now with President Trump coming back into office, he is demanding accountability for these military officers. So this is the ideal time to start passing military reform bills that will help our men and women in uniform and also encourage younger generations to once again join the military and serve their country, knowing that they're going to be protected and taken care of, and that they are endowed with the same constitutional rights that they've raised their right hand to swear to protect and defend.
Like we said in the previous interview, we have the same sort of similar issues here with the women of honor and within the military, and that still hasn't been sorted out either. And Adam, in America, there's a lot of things happening, especially for women, reclaiming our spaces and places, like Senator Nancy Mace. Tell us what is happening in Congress.
So Nancy Mace, she's a Republican politician, a businesswoman. She serves as U.S. Congresswoman in South Carolina's first congressional district, and she won that race in 2020. She's also the first woman to ever graduate from the Citadel, which is a civilian military college equivalent basically to West Point. West Point is the federal military academy. The Citadel is a civilian military academy, but you can also commission as an officer out of there. So she's very committed to military and veteran issues. So if anyone knows anything about women and men's spaces and how that works in the U.S. military, it's definitely her. You know, throughout her political career, she's focused on issues such as economic development, fiscal responsibility, and especially women's rights, and advocating for those conservative principles in her district. So she's been pretty much recognized for her ability to connect with these diverse constituents and navigating these complex legislative issues. And I think for the past couple of years, people have been hammered on the LGBTQI community, where a very small portion of the population is now telling the majority of the population what to do. And if we really believe in democracy and transparency, that it is okay that we can exist in the same space, we can live together in peace, we can do all these other things. But, you know, even as a conservative Catholic, if I don't agree with your views on sex or relationships or families, that's okay. We can disagree on things. It doesn't mean we have to attack each other constantly. However, it's gotten to the point where some of these individuals who claim this identity, which is actually listed as a mental health issue in the DSM-5. It is an actual medical diagnosis for gender dysphoria, are now invading federal spaces, and that's funded by the taxpayers, right? We pay billions of dollars a year to make sure that our representatives here in the United States are representing us and our values and what we're doing. And she has put her foot down where she is not allowing men who identify as women, which is impossible from that perspective, that they should not be allowed in women's bathrooms. And I think that's a completely reasonable ask. You know, if a biological male is trying to force himself into a woman's area, I mean, from my experience, that leads to sexual assault. That leads to bad things happening. And there's a long list of these people getting arrested and dealing with these things here in the United States. And unfortunately, the mainstream media really likes to cover this up and not talk about it. You know, I feel for these people. I have empathy and sympathy for them that, you know, they need medical help, or they, you know, discovering who they are or why they've decided to do these things, but that doesn't give them the right to harm women in women's spaces. And Nancy Mace has made it very clear that she will not permit men to enter women's bathrooms in a federal legislative building. And I think that's completely fair and reasonable.
Yeah. I agree. I'm one of these gender critical women here in Ireland, and I'm a very proud turf, is what they call them over here, and we're fighting that over here as well here in Ireland. You know, the puberty blockers and men thinking that they can even get pregnant and breastfeed and everything else. My opinion is, I don't care what, and I think you said a video the other day too, I don't care if you dress up as a man or whatever, you go and have surgeries. You can do what you want, but you're not a man, and you should not invade women's spaces. You cannot breastfeed, as they call it, chest feed. You cannot, you know, you should not be able to have a surrogacy. You know, and you certainly cannot get pregnant. And you certainly, you know, if you want to have all these hormones and you're going through the menopause, well, you know what? Don't complain about it. You know, you're not a woman. A man, you cannot change sex. There's only two sexes, a woman and a man. And
Exactly. And yes, there are, you know, genetic deficiencies and abnormalities, and we understand that. Those are different. There's a very, very small part of the population that has to deal with that. I understand that. You know, but they always say this is for the future of our country, and this is for, you know, saving our children. Well, I'm sorry, but giving puberty blockers to children under the age of 18 is extremely good. It's going to damage their bones. It's going to actually physically harm them. And unfortunately, what people don't understand is babies require a mother and a father. They really do. And I understand there's divorce and there's singles mom and there's single dads. But in reality, you and I do not exist without a mother and a father, no matter what. And unfortunately, the future of our society, the future of Ireland, the future of the United States requires men and women to have babies and raise families. right?
Yeah.
And if that's what we need to do to ensure that our culture and our values survive, then we should be encouraging the majority of our populations to have healthy, safe families with children. And if these people choose to sterilize themselves and they choose not to have children, that's fine, but they're just going to genetically eliminate themselves from their own bloodline by their own choice. And that's their freedom to do so.
And in America, you have the same issue what we have over here in Ireland, and that is men playing in women's sports. You know, we've had it within the Irish GAA. We've had it in, have we had it in soccer yet? But we also,
No.
here recently, we've had men going in and playing in women's golf tournaments and going into women's changing rooms. And the women are not allowed to say anything. But you know what? Gulf Island are pushing it. And so we're fighting that battle here. I'm with a group of women over here. We've been fighting that for a good few years as well.
Well, it's funny because you don't see women wanting to play in men's sports. I don't see any women wanting to play in the NFL, right?
No.
Because they recognize if women play in the NFL, they're going to get their skulls crushed. Let's just be blunt and honest, right? The problem is that these men have autogynephilia. They get sexual arousal from pretending to be women, and they go in there to dominate and suppress women, right? And if we want to talk about women's rights, let's talk about Title IX here in the United States. Hundreds of thousands of women have fought, since the 1920s in this country to ensure that women could vote and women could have their own credit cards, after the 70s and the Civil Rights Act and everything else, because women wanted to be treated as equal to their male counterparts, not the same, but as equal, because we have to recognize we have those biological differences. And I think that is great because so many women have been given the opportunity to go to college on sports scholarships, right? And different types of jobs and everything else because they are powerful and empowered women because they're given the opportunity to do so. But when a man who's pretending to be a woman goes into these spaces and takes away their scholarships and takes away their jobs, well, now that's suppressing women. That's not empowering women. You're actually suppressing women by allowing men to, once again, take away those women's freedoms that women have fought for hundreds of years to be treated as their equal.
Completely agree with you. I absolutely. It's great to have a fellow male turf in the room as well with Paul as well. So Adam, we January, the inauguration is coming up in January, and it'd be great excitement. But however, all the placements and all the appointments are being discussed, and a lot of appointments have been made public. Tell us all about that.
Great. So let's talk about the ones that we know that are definite for sure, and we can talk about the ones that are potentially going to be selected that have not been official yet. So obviously, number one on that list is Susie Wiles. Susie Wiles has been selected as the White House Chief of Staff. She's extremely experienced political strategist, and she's obviously a Republican operative. She's worked with Trump in the past. She has a great track record of running successful campaigns, including Trump's presidential bids. She's known for her ability to manage these complex political environments and navigate high-stakes negotiations. And you need somebody in that position as the White House Chief of Staff, right? We need somebody who's going to be no BS, go in there, break necks and cash checks, so to speak. And Susie Wiles is definitely a great pick for Trump. And a lot of people complain that Trump is choosing loyalists over qualified people. I would disagree. All of the people that he has selected are highly qualified for their positions. But yes, they are loyalists. I think President Trump learned on his first term where he was bringing in people that necessarily weren't loyalists because he was trying to come off as fair to everybody. But then they just spent basically the last 8 years trying to criminally indict him on a bunch of fake, false accusations in order to reduce his ability to pass reform in the United States government. He knows this is a lame duck presidency. This is his last chance to make a difference in America before he has to actually retire back to Mar-a-Lago. So he's going to do whatever he can to make sure the correct people are in these positions so he can completely reform the government. And next to that select is Marco Rubio for Secretary of State. Secretary of State outside of the presidency is one of the most important positions in the cabinet because you are the person that's interacting with every single one of our allies and allied countries. He has, he's a U.S. Senator from Florida. He has extensive experience in foreign relations. He served on multiple key Senate committees. He has a huge focus on strengthening U.S. alliances and addressing global challenges. And I think that, especially with Ireland, that's critical. For the last several years, we have abandoned our allies. We've destroyed our relationships with our partners, especially in NATO. We need to reform and rebuild those relationships. Thomas Jefferson was a great Secretary of State back in the day, and he's a perfect example. And I think he really brings that type of style back into the administration. We saw originally Matt Gaetz was selected as Attorney General, but basically because they put John Thune in as one of the Senate Majority Leaders, who is a rhino. In the United States, it means Republican in name only. they basically determined that he was not going to get confirmed because Matt Gaetz is a fire starter. I've worked with Matt Gaetz personally. I've met with him. I know who he is. He's a great guy. I was disappointed that he withdrew his nomination, but he understands that this is about service over self. And as a result, Pam Bondi was selected. So Pam Bondi is also the Attorney General of Florida. So she's worked with Matt as well. She has the same type of mentality. She's known for her work on consumer protection, criminal justice issues. She's got a lot of experience in public service and private law practice, and she has a massively strong legal background. She has supported a lot of these public policies and initiatives, especially with law enforcement. And with the huge BLM movement and the defund the police movement, we need to bring back to support our local police and empower our police officers to bring law and order back into the United States. And she's also a huge proponent of fighting drug abuse and human trafficking, which is a massive problem in the United States. The United States is actually one of the #1 areas of fentanyl and one of the highest, if not the #1 country in the world that deals with human trafficking.
But do you know Ireland is very high too? Up until COVID, Ireland was on tier 2 of the human traffic list, and we were only taken off because of COVID. Yet our ports, airports, and borders were all open for international travel, but we couldn't move. So we have a big issue with human trafficking here too. So, you know, I think that's something we've talked about it, Paul, haven't we?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
human trafficking, child trafficking, and
kind of like Ireland's dirty little secret.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
and Adam, what do you make of the defense pick, Pete Hegseth?
Hegseth. Yeah, Pete Hegseth.
Sorry if I pronounced that wrong.
One of my favorite picks, and there is a lot of stuff going on about him right now. You know, he apparently got intoxicated with a woman several years ago who was married, and her husband and children were in the same hotel room, and she cheated on her husband with Pete Hegseth. Now, I'm not saying, is that morally correct? No. But she made that decision. But to come out and make false sexual assault claims against the guy who's now running for defense secretary when all those issues were dismissed several years ago, that's a typical Democratic ploy here in the United States. But he is a combat veteran. He's deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan, and he is on the same page as me when it comes to we need to be advocates for our veterans and military personnel. He has a massive commitment to national security and military readiness, and, you know, especially getting rid of the DEI, the woke agenda, the transgenders out of our military that make us less combat effective, especially with such security risks as China and Russia and Iran. We just need a complete reform. And Pete, and the reason we're fighting him so hard is because they know when he gets confirmed as defense secretary, this nonsense is going to stop, because his focus is on modernizing military strategies and supporting veterans issues, which has not been the case for the past several years. Donald Austin is an embarrassment to the United States military. He had a fake Silver Star that he appointed himself from his other general friend. That's not Pete Hegseth. Pete Hegseth did actually serve in combat as a platoon leader in the United States Army. You know, he wasn't just one of these generals that was given a political position. He's a man that's been on the ground, been with the men, and is highly respected in the veteran community.
And 2 former Democrats are also going to be in Donald Trump's cabinet. You have Robert Kennedy Jr., who's become the health secretary, who actually was going to run for the presidency, but he dropped out to support Donald Trump, and Tulsi Gabbard, who's going to be head of national intelligence, who you on this program to get a position as well.
Yep. So let's talk about RFK first. He is a great pick. He was an environmental attorney and an activist. He's known for his advocacy on public health and environmental issues. And he was selected as a Secretary for Health and Human Services. And we need a massive reform of our health system in the United States. We have too many obese people, too many people with diabetes, too many issues with chemicals in our food. Like everyone makes the joke is that we travel overseas and go overseas and we actually lose weight eating more food. And then you come back to the United States and oh yeah, you can go to Italy and eat like totally clean food and actually lose weight. And then you come back to the United States, you eat the same types of food, but they got so many types of poisons and toxins and everything's just unrestricted in the United States. And that's why we are such an unhealthy country. We are one of the most obese countries in the world, if not the #1. And he wants to fix that. He wants to basically have European food standards put into the United States, right? But why are people fighting him so much? Because it's going to cost these food companies millions and billions of dollars, because they're going to be forced to actually put good ingredients. It is going to raise the cost of food a little bit, obviously, because you're putting in healthy ingredients and eliminating fake chemicals and fake sweeteners and stuff. But our population is too sick. we cannot keep doing this to the future of America and the future generation of our children. And I'm really excited for him to come in and really prioritize that. Just the one thing that Donald Trump said he's not allowed to touch is the oil and gas industry. He is definitely an anti-oil and gas, anti-fracker. That's his personal environmental bias. I don't think he's up to speed on how it actually works. He should probably come talk to me, RFK, if you want to really dive into the oil and gas industry. I'll bring you out to the refinery myself. But I think he is going to be revolutionary for our health system and actually getting Americans good health care and nutritious food and getting rid of the food lobbying industry in Washington, D.C.
And he's also written a letter to the fast food industries to request that they take away the seed oil out of their ingredients as well.
Yep, absolutely. Seed oils are absolutely terrible. That's why the Italians only use cold pressed olive oil. I mean, come on, let's just follow the Italians. They obviously know how to make food. So, I don't understand the big issue. And so let's talk about Tulsi Gabbard. She was appointed as a director of national intelligence, which I think is hilarious because President Biden put her on a watch list onto the TSA, and now she's their boss. So that's just kind of that's just a real shot in the gut there. But I personally worked for Tulsi Gabbard. She was my commander in the civil affairs here in the Army for a short period of time, but I did get to talk with her. She is a great human being. She is an amazing leader. She just commands any room she walks into. She's such an ethical and moral person. And the funny thing was that she was a Democrat. Like, she was a Democratic congresswoman in Hawaii who really saw how corrupt that party was and actually switched to being a Republican. And now she's serving in a Republican administration, which is great. But she is a combat veteran. She was first served in the Army National Guard. She served 2 tours in the Middle East. She is massively knowledgeable on foreign policy and national security issues. And she's going to hopefully revamp the entire intelligence agency here in the U.S. We saw the corruption with that during the Trump administration and even during the Biden administration with the fake defense intelligence letter with 51 people signed that, this is Russian disinformation, that the Hunter Biden laptop wasn't real, when that was all a lie. And we lost so much trust and confidence in our 3-letter agencies, the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, the DIA, the ATF, that no American trusts these federal government agencies that are supposed to serve and protect us, because intelligence has been used against Americans. They've been spying on our phones and spying on our emails and spying everywhere else. Edward Snowden came out and said that years ago, and she's hopefully going to fix that. And that's one appointment I want to talk about too, is Kash Patel. So Kash Patel was appointed as a director of the FBI recently, and the FBI needs a complete clean sweep. Everyone in that organization, minus maybe some of the special agents, need to be completely fired because everyone has lost trust in the FBI. And in the old days, when everyone saw the FBI show up, everyone thought that the good guys were going to finally be moral and ethical and fight bad guys and protect Americans. But the FBI has been used as a way to fight your political adversaries, and it's a disgrace, right? So he was an attorney for the Trump administration previously. He's very well versed on national security and intelligence matters. He was the deputy of national security advisor and played a significant role in those efforts with the Russia investigation. And he's actually the one that came out publicly and said, all this stuff is made up. And then everyone crushed him for it because he's like, so this whole Russia disinformation campaign's a lie. It actually came from Hillary Clinton and the fake Steele dossier. And then he got crushed for it for telling the truth. So it's really great that he is now going to be in charge of that organization and is just going to come in and clean house. And like I said, I'm really looking forward to watching all these people come in and fix our government finally.
And Adam, what do you make of the education appointment, Linda McMahon, for our viewers out there who'll be wrestling fans? Of course, she was married to Vince McMahon, who's the CEO of, and she was CEO of the World Wrestling Entertainment. He's left the company due to various different indiscretions, but she's back in cabinet, having formerly been, I think she was Minister for, or Secretary of State for Small Business.
Yeah, and she's a great pick for the Department of Education in that aspect, because they're most likely just going to get rid of it. I think it's just a placeholder. She's a businesswoman. She's knowledgeable in these things. She'll help really foot it. But like I said, Trump's one of his agenda items is to get rid of the Department of Education, and I fully support that, because I think education needs to be brought back down to the state level, because since the Department of Education, I believe it was formed in 1972 or 79, our country has just gotten dumber. We are low performing in math. We are not good at, finance. We can't, kids cannot today go out and do proper research and understand disinformation and what actual collegiate research is. We have universities out there making up fake studies about, all these critical issues, and our population is not gaining any benefit from it. So if we want to bring education back to the local, whether it's homeschooling or back down to the state level, like actually I'm from the state of New Jersey, right? So New Jersey actually has one of the best education systems in the country. You know, I applaud New Jersey for educating me the way that they did, because they taught me about research. They taught me about math and science. They taught me about English, literature, and all these other things. And, you know, but then you go to another state like Mississippi where it's completely failing, right? So the Department of Education, its entire point was to come in and fix all this and standardize everything across the board, but they just made it worse. They're now forcing standardized tests, you know, the SATs or the ACTs or whatever across the board in the United States, but everyone's just cheating, right? The teachers are giving the kids the answers because the teachers need to meet that federal metric in order to keep their job, right? So when the teachers are like, hey, if your kids don't meet the 80% threshold, you're fired. Well, what are the teachers going to do? They're just going to game the system to keep their job. And that's all under the the Department of Education, right? So we need to get rid of these forced metrics and actually measure our children on their competency. And if they need the extra help, we ship them to a different program or everything else. And that should go state by state. And we can save the country billions of wasted taxpayer dollars on false metrics for our education system.
Right. And also, she'd be responsible for student loans and say our loans being paid and stuff like that. Do you think there'll be some movement there as well on, you know, helping more people go
And
go
that's
to
and
college,
that's
or try
definitely
to lift the burden that, you know, like when
it's
you
an interesting,
there's lots
yeah.
of people when they graduate in the US, they have a lot of student debt.
It's a massive fraud. There are students who are in hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt for a worthless degree, and they still can't get a job,
Yeah.
right? And there are a lot of people, especially on the conservative side, that agree that they took the irresponsibility of taking out these loans and getting a useless education, and now they can't use it, so they should pay for it. But here's the thing. These people will never be able to pay off those loans. It is not possible. They can't do it. And maybe this is maybe the more socialist liberal side of me, where I think if we're going to save billions of dollars by eliminating all these useless government positions and get rid of the Department of Education, we can use that to wipe the slate clean for all these federal student loans, right? They're claiming, oh, it's going to cost $1.2 trillion to pay off student loan debt. I'm like, okay, well, we can eliminate $1.2 trillion from the budget. Right. And I think it would be a good reaching across the aisle motion, right? Where I believe in fiscal responsibility. I paid off my own student loans. I did those things, right? But there are some people that don't have a good job like me who will never be able to do that. And if they're going to be financially burdened for the rest of their lives, I think Donald Trump, in a way of making peace with the Democrats, is to eliminate a bunch of useless government spending and then use that to either pay off all or at least some of these student loans that Americans have been scammed with for the last 20, 30 years. And then give everyone just a good reset. Like, let's give everyone a good economic reset that, hey, if you make bad decisions from here on out, that's on you. If you want to go out and get useless degrees, that's on you. But I think that millennials, Gen Z, Gen Alpha that are coming behind me, they have no way of ever being successful because they will never be able to make the amount of money needed to pay back those loans. And we need these people to be encouraged to start families, buy homes, and they can't do it without, you know, having $400,000 of debt on their record that they'll never be able to pay off, right?
That's mad. And where does Elon Musk fit in all of this, Adam, as well? I know he's going to head up some government efficiency task force or something like that. I think plan is to try find about 1 trillion in savings.
That's not hard to do in the U.S. government. I mean, we have government buildings that are 80% empty, but we're paying millions of dollars a month in rent to rent federal land. That alone, because all these people are working from home, or they still think they have COVID and they're wearing their mask inside their cars or something. Well, we can fire those people because they're obviously useless. But yeah, bringing in Elon Musk, who is a renowned businessman who did the same thing with Twitter, right? He bought Twitter for whatever, $42 billion. He fired 80% of the people, and everyone said that Twitter was going to fail and it was a bad investment. And now it's the #1 social media program. It's the #1 source of uncensored news in the world. And he's making money off of it, right? So why can't we do that to the U.S. government? I think that Elon Musk with Vivek Ramaswamy could come in and eliminate all this useless government spending. And he's even said, we'll pay all these useless government federal workers 2 years of salary to quit because it's still cheaper to pay them 2 years salary to go find an actual worthwhile job that's contributing to the economy than to pay you to fake work at your house from, when we're paying you to sit in an office to do nothing, right? And I see that fraud, waste, and abuse in the military alone. I've seen them throw out millions of dollars of equipment because somebody forgot to put it on an Excel spreadsheet and they lost it. So instead of just actually looking for that equipment overseas or wherever else, they just go out and buy more because they know where that is because they'll just buy more, right? So if we bring in those two people who are very business-minded people, and they'll come in, and like I said, they could save trillions of dollars. We can help wipe out student debt with that. We can help fix and heal this country from, over 30, 40 years of corruption since the Reagan administration. So,
And Elon and how do you pronounce it?
Vivek Ramaswamy.
They're both doing this on a voluntary basis, aren't they?
Yep, they're not getting paid for it.
Yeah.
Which is great. There's no incentive for them to do this. Like I said, they are multi-billionaire, millionaire businessmen. They don't need this job. Just like Donald Trump. That's why they're scared of these people, is because it's actually costing them money to run for office. They gain no net benefit out of this whatsoever. They're actually doing this because they care about the survival of their country and our Constitution. And that's why all the people who are career politicians, like Nancy Pelosi, who only makes $186,000 a year on her salary, but somehow she's worth over $220 million because of inside stock trading, right? All of these people that come in on the lower level, their only goal is to fleece the American people and game the system so they become millionaires. And a lot of people want to talk about how we need to make the millionaires pay their fair share in this country and all this other nonsense. But if you put a bunch of millionaires and billionaires who are ethical, who are not taking a salary, like I said, Donald Trump next to JFK is the only president in American history to work for free. They donate their salary to other organizations, right? These people actually care about American businesses. They care about America. And that's who you want in charge. You want people who are morally and ethically sound and aren't using their positions of power to manipulate their own incomes.
I was watching a podcast today with Dr. Jan Halper Hayes, and she was saying in the podcast with Steve, excuse my pronunciation, Schutz. And she was saying that it's the first time the president with Elon Musk and Bobby Kennedy has a group of equals. And this will go down in history, that the three men will go down as founding fathers of the change of government and bringing it back to a republic. So when you think about with Elon Musk and all these great businessmen who don't need the money are coming in, doing the voluntary, and with Robert Kennedy, they're equals.
Yes.
And that is what is so wonderful. They're going in as equals, and it's going to go down in history.
Absolutely, 100% agree with that.
Yeah.
And that's why all these corrupt, swampy people are fighting so hard to disavow all these people and discredit them, is because they're going to cut them off.
Yeah.
Nancy Pelosi's are no longer going to be able to run for office. And it might take a few more years, but if they completely reset the U.S. government in the next couple of years, people like Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell and all these corrupt politicians like Chuck Schumer and Adam Smith or whatever, or Adam Schiff, whatever his name is, they won't be able to lie to the American people anymore. We expect trust and transparency between our elected officials, right?
Yeah.
And we're slowly going to see that system break. And I know we talked about this before the podcast started, but I'm hoping that President Trump comes in with a mandate to fix our election system as well. We know that the Dominion voting machines are corrupt. We know that they have backdoors and they have Wi-Fi connections. And the state of Colorado, there's actually a massive lawsuit against the Secretary of State, Jenna Griswold, because we found out that all of the BIOS passwords, basic input-output system, were leaked on the internet for 6 months, which means that any hacker from anywhere in the world could come in and manipulate our election. So to be fair, we don't even know if the people who won their primary election that went to the general election, who are currently our new elected officials, are actually the people that are supposed to be there, because their entire primary race was corrupted. So somebody could have went in from China, made that person win the race, and then we were forced to vote for them in the general election because it's all planned out, right? And I know people says, oh, that sounds like a conspiracy theory, but I actually met with a cybersecurity expert yesterday, Mark Cook, who broke it down and showed me on the computer screen about how these systems were hacked, how the ballots are shifted, and why mail-in voting is such a dangerous thing in the United States, which is why I'm hoping that one of the reforms that the Trump administration is going to do is that there's only one day of voting. It's in person with voter ID. There's no more mail-in voting unless it's a disabled person or military personnel, with obviously a controlled, ballot at that point. But we can no longer deal with these corrupted, manipulated elections because not only does it affect everyone cares about, oh, the president of the United States. For most people, the president of the United States doesn't matter. You are never going to meet this person. You're never going to actually interact with them. What matters is your local elections, your mayors, your county commissioners, your board of education, and all of those elections are being manipulated here. And we've seen that in person here in Colorado, and it is so incredibly dangerous for families and their children moving forward. And that's why I'm hoping that we get massive election reform, that the American people can now trust their government and trust that their vote in their democracy actually counts.
And there's also a discrepancy, isn't there, in the Colorado voting system, wasn't there?
Yes, there was. So like I said, it's it's in federal court right now. There's a lot of things going on right now, but they basically discovered that, oh, we found all these votes came in after the election. Well, how is that possible? Voting ends at midnight on election day. So all these people that won their races, right? Well, now they're telling them that they're going to lose because we found 13 million votes that were distributed elsewhere. How is that possible? It's not possible, right? So the machines are corrupted. It's manipulated. They can't be trusted. And actually, there's a big fight going on in Colorado right now to not certify the election. A lot of the Republicans here in the state of Colorado are demanding in-person hand recount verification of every vote in every race, which would cost the state millions of dollars. But that's money well spent, in my opinion, to ensure that the people who elected these officials are actually in office and that there's not a potentially corrupted fake electoral electronic system that is manipulating the people that are being put in public positions of trust. So,
Yeah.
Hi, Paul.
Mad when you think about it, because as or maybe some of our viewers may or may not know, but Roisin and I will be at the general election counting Carlow Kilkenny at the weekend, and we're going to see that, Roisin, all the ballot boxes being opened and all the counts. You know, it can go on forever and ever and stuff like that, but at least there's lots to be said for the
We have
paper and
the
the pen.
voter ID. We have the sorry, Paul. We have the voter ID over here, and all the votes are hand counted.
and that's the way it should be everywhere.
That's
We
what
should
we
bring
have.
Ireland's system to the United States because it's the only thing that's trustworthy. Your ID matches with your ballot. It's on paper. It's in a box. That box is not opened until the election polls close, and there's no more votes accepted after midnight on that day. Period. End of story.
I think
It's such a simple solution.
The polling stations here close at 10 o'clock, don't they, Paul? And then
That's
9
right, yeah.
a.m. the next morning, the voting, the black boxes are opened and in front of everybody, and then the counting is called the tallies here. So yeah. So who else do you have on your list of appointments, Adam?
So Todd Blanche was appointed as a deputy attorney general, so he would be working with Pam Bondi. He's also a great pick. He's been a real prominent attorney. He's got a lot of experience in criminal defense and government law. And if we're going to start eliminating government regulations and bringing back the power to our police departments with these complex legal issues, he's definitely the guy that Pam Bondi needs as his assistant. Russ Vaught was also put as the Office of Management and Budget Director. And obviously, we need people to revise the budget here in the United States. He is very experienced when it comes to budgetary matters and fiscal policy. And that's been a big talking point for the Republicans now is we need to get our spending under control. We need to promote efficiency with federal agencies. And if that means eliminating the federal agencies that are wasting taxpayer dollars, that's where his focus on is reducing the national debt while enhancing budget transparency and accountability. And like I said, I hope they drag these people in kicking and screaming to force them to do it because it's out of control. Another critical point or person that he appointed was Elise Stefanik for the UN ambassador. She is a powerhouse from New York, and there's nothing more scary than a woman from New York. Let me tell you, as someone who grew up there. Donald Trump is a great example, right? So she's emerged as a prominent Republican voice on the national security and foreign affairs. Her role, she was as a UN ambassador. She'd be focusing on advancing U.S. priorities, between Ireland and all these European nations that we have neglected our relationship for years, and promoting global governance reforms. When that comes to NATO or the World Bank, she's definitely known for her strong communication skills. She's built up numerous coalitions to strengthen alliances through her diplomacy. And I'm hoping that she's going to advocate for these issues, especially such as women's rights, especially in countries where women's rights is actually an issue, like Afghanistan and India and the Middle East, where these women are tortured and raped and killed. we need to actually fight for women's rights. And I think
Yeah.
her pick as a UN ambassador, as a strong New York woman, is a great pick. Also, one of my favorite, it's not technically an official government position, but Tom Holman as the border czar. I am really, once again, another hardcore New Yorker, no nonsense guy. You know, he was the former acting director of ICE, immigration control, you know, and enforcement. He brings extensive law enforcement experience and focus on immigration enforcement. He's going to build that wall. He's going to deport everybody on day one. But that's going to be an issue, right? Because there's this posse comitatus, which is a system in the United States where the actual federal U.S. military cannot be used for local things in the United States. It has to be part of the National Guard directed by the governors, right? But he can control the ATF or the FBI or all these other local federal agencies to do that. But I mean, his leadership style, he's a tough stance on illegal immigration. He stresses the importance of safety and security at the borders. And as we saw with the recent murder case with Laken Riley, where she was murdered and raped and had her head crushed with a rock, you know, and Donald Trump and Holman are advocating for the death penalty for illegal immigrants who are killing American citizens, and I'm in full support of that. Also, Doug Collins, he was appointed as Secretary of Veteran Affairs. He's a former congressman from Georgia, and he's recognized for his advocacy with veterans' rights and healthcare access. And as a veteran myself, the Veterans Affairs is a complete disaster. If everyone, you know, wants to talk about socialized healthcare in the United States, the VA is pretty much socialized healthcare for veterans, and you're on a 2-year waiting list to get surgery or medications. And the only solution for veterans now is we're going to give you a bunch of drugs. Here's a bag full of drugs. Just go, you know, don't kill yourself, please. And that's just not the solution after 20 years of war. He wants to come in. He wants to make sure that veterans, especially people like me who live in rural areas, that we can choose our own doctors and we can use the funding from the VA to go see our own professionals that we trust, to not be on a 2-year waiting list to get the healthcare that we need now. He wants to improve those services and benefits of veterans. He wants to emphasize that accountability because, once again, the VA wastes billions of dollars a year on wasteful spending in the system, and he's going to bring that under control. Who else? Oh, yeah, Michael Waltz. So he is appointed as National Security Advisor. He's also a U.S. Congressman, and he's a former Green Beret. And I worked with Green Berets for 10 years. They're the best of the best in the United States. They're a bunch of guys with tattoos who like to kill terrorists, and I love those types of people. So if anyone who wants to be in charge of national security, it probably should be him. And he's definitely going to be focusing on addressing threats from adversaries, enhancing U.S. readiness, and also fighting the cartels. You know, we did it wrong in the 80s. It was this war on drugs that Reagan did, and we were going into there. But it's, you know, we're going to just eliminate them at the border as they stand. There's a lot of open desert in Texas and Arizona, you know, so we're not going to blow up any buildings out there. And it's great training for our Green Berets and Special Forces guys. You know, if you guys really want to fight some guys who know how to use guns, you can go train with the cartels versus shooting fake cardboard cutouts, you know, somewhere in a desert in Arizona. But he definitely has the experience to navigate those complex geopolitical landscapes. And, you know, having an actual Green Beret who has served his time in combat and has that experience, he is just a great pick to come in as a national security advisor. So,
And Adam, what do you think of his Secretary of the Treasury pick, Scott Bessent, I think his name is.
yeah, so this is going to be an interesting diversion because there is a lot of talk on how to reform the U.S. Treasury and not only get money into the system, but also reform the tax code, right? And that's going to be a big push for him. You know, he's an experienced businessman. He's very financially solvent. You know, everyone complains, well, he's a big Wall Street guy and blah, blah, blah. Well, you want to know what? You probably want somebody who knows what they're talking about in this position because the person, Jeanette Holman or whatever her name is, that's in now, she's clueless. She's the person that shows up and tries to buy something for $10, you know, and it gives them $1,000 because she can't understand what ones and zeros are, right? So we need somebody to come in and really reform our tax code, and I think he is going to really take the lead on that. I think we can, you know, our tax code's like 10,000 pages long. We can eliminate it to 2 pages. Flat tax, consumer-based tax only. But the interesting thing that he's probably going to get fought on a lot is probably the tariffs situation, right? Donald Trump says he wants to come out and put 1,000% tariff on China. I don't think that's realistic. I think that's just a lot of hyperbole speaking in there. But yes, we do need to make sure we're holding our trading partners accountable overseas, that we're not getting taken for a ride. You know, getting rid of NAFTA was a good thing under the Trump administration because it's forcing, you know, Canada is actually our biggest trade partner. They're actually also the largest importer of oil and gas here in the United States. But allowing them a free ride here in the United States without getting anything back, and then we're being forced to buy Chinese electric vehicles at the cost of the American manufacturing business is not good, right? So we need to optimize our treasury, and getting rid of all the corruption in that department is going to be a big task. And I think he's up for the job. So,
And do you think that Donald Trump will uh, do what he says, as in cut corporation tax and bring more of those US corporations that are based in Europe, and there's a good few here in Ireland, back home to the US?
well, it's actually, so I could tell a personal anecdotal story about this. So one of my really good friends worked for Apple in Ireland, right?
Okay.
She did. And she was telling me about how those, and this is interesting, about how the Irish, the locals were treated with preference over the American workers in Ireland, and how like they would get their cars paid for by Apple, they would get EV surcharges paid for by Apple, but any American citizen working in these American companies overseas were not allowed to buy houses. They were not allowed to rent or anything, and they were forced to live in like one-bedroom apartments of really wealthy people outside the city limits. So I think what Donald Trump's intentions are is, yes, he wants to bring back manufacturing and some of these U.S. companies to the United States and give them a beneficial for the taxes. But I think there's also a business transparency and trade and agreement with these companies as well. He's like, you can keep those businesses, but you have to benefit American workers as well. And I think there's going to be a lot of negotiations involved with keeping some of those businesses. Because like I said, we are not the best manufacturers of computer chips, for example. So forcing everything in Taiwan to come to Arizona, is probably not the best, because those people have been doing it for decades, right? But there has to be some kind of negotiation, whether it's a zero net trade deal or whatever else. So I don't think all U.S. companies are going to be forcing themselves back into the United States, but I think that there needs to be a line drawn in the sand where they're not taking advantage of the American worker as well, in addition to our allies overseas that have these U.S. companies in their borders.
Yeah, because how much did Ireland get from Apple, Paul? Was it 14?
14 billion, which we fought in court not to take, and then in the end, the court ruled that Apple had to pay it. So we've got a 14 billion kind of windfall coming now, and it is a topic during the coming election of where should that 14 billion be spent.
And it's true,
Right.
you think we don't, like, we have a housing crisis. But to say to when you think that you're bringing an international company to Ireland, and you're bringing the citizens of that company over to work in their European head office, you need to actually provide them with accommodation and give them the perks as well that they need for traveling overseas and living abroad.
Yeah, I mean, my friend personally told me that she was not allowed to be promoted within the company because only Irish residents were allowed to be promoted within Apple in Ireland. So because she didn't get promoted and she couldn't get housing, she decided not to maintain or try to get a citizenship in the UK and in Ireland, and she decided to come back to the United States, right? So it's, if you're disincentivizing American companies by mistreating American workers, and this is just a very anecdotal small example, right? Then yeah, they're going to want to come back to the US.
Yeah.
Like, so she actually ended up moving back to the US here last month and said, I couldn't get promoted. I couldn't make more money. I wasn't treated well. And as a result, that division got eliminated and then moved back to Austin, Texas. So that's why I said Apple is actually starting to dismantle itself in Ireland because of that. So if you want the businesses to succeed in Ireland, then you have to give the American workers the ability to live and raise their families and also be promoted as well within the system. It can't just be ethnocentric to that country.
Because that's something that we don't hear about here in Ireland, is how the American citizens who come over and work in Apple, how they've been treated. It's just, we just think, oh, big tech, all the companies that Ireland just thinks big tech is everything, and all the other manufacturing has forgotten. But that's something that should be highlighted here as well. Because it's okay saying to international people, come over, you're earning big money, you can afford these big apartments that the Irish people cannot afford. But that's not the real truth in it. What we just
It's not. Yeah, she was forced to live in a drafty castle in a single bedroom room, and she had to rent it for 3 times what the local Irish people were paying because she was an American.
That's extortion.
Right? That's extortion. And that's exactly why she left Ireland and came back to Austin, Texas, is because she's like, I couldn't afford to live in Ireland, and I had to basically buy a jalopy car. And this is interesting too. She was forced as an American to park on the other side of the parking lot, where if you were an Irish citizen, you were allowed to park up front to the company building, and you had free electric charging for your car that was bought for by Apple. Right. So, I mean, this is just, like I said, this is the disparity. If everyone got treated equal, that's a different story. But she said that with her experience with Apple in Ireland, she was not treated as an equal. and she was treated as basically an illegal immigrant in in America, right? So
Really? Oh,
yeah,
I'm really
yeah,
sorry that she's had that experience over here.
I was surprised to hear that too. I did not think about that. You know what I mean? But it's
That's
kind of the
something that
equivalent.
should be negotiated with, because when you think everyone is now going to have to work with President Donald Trump's administration, and
Mhm.
they're all going to have to renegotiate business, and they talk about, oh, it's going to be a trade war, and as I've said here before, it's up to Ireland to negotiate. I'm sure
Correct.
that
It's not a trade war, it's a trade negotiation.
yeah, that's what I said to when we've been interviewing our candidates. And with a couple of them, they said, oh, it's going to be a trade war. And I said, hold on a minute. Isn't that what President Trump is supposed to do? He's supposed to actually make America great again and look after the American jobs and the American citizens. And they agreed. And I said, that's up to Ireland then to negotiate with America and rebuild the relationship with America and for business
Correct.
and trade.
Yeah,
So,
correct. And like I said, if Donald Trump hears that American workers are being mistreated overseas or
yeah,
whatever country it is, then he's going to pull that business back and give them more tax incentives to move their business back here, right? It's
yeah.
kind of the same. It's the same argument that if I wanted to go work in the oil and gas industry in the Middle East, right? Even though I'm a highly experienced oil and gas worker and I'm much more knowledgeable than locals in that, if I tried to go work for Saudi Aramco, those local nationals who have less experience than me are going to be given priority and better jobs and better pay. And then I'm going to be treated as a second-rate citizen, even though my company is funding all their efforts for drilling in Saudi Arabia or whatever it is, right? So that's why they have, expats and small little American villages out there, but they're even separated from the normal national society. So it's the same argument, right? It's just that if you want American businesses to be successful overseas, then you have to treat them as American citizens and treat them as your equal and not treat them as like sub-level human and discourage them from wanting to work and spend their money in your country.
You just brought back some very happy memories of me. I grew up in Saudi Arabia, and I used to visit the Ramco camp quite often because we used to have the horses, and we used to travel up and have equestrian competitions with Aramco. And it was some massive. That was back in the 80s. Wow, and it was some setup over there.
And
Father
Adam,
worked in the oil industry as well.
one of the big, probably if you were looking at things that was one of the reasons why Donald Trump got back in was his commitment to reduce inflation, which is very very big problem in the United States. I saw somebody in America that they showed a picture of their grocery bill and it was like off the wall. Well, is that probably going to be his probably his number one thing that he's going to have to tackle is the cost of living. Because when Kamala Harris was asked what would she do different to kind of address that, she said, "There's nothing that I can think of."
Yeah, that's ridiculous. Now, there's plenty of things that
Mm,
you can do. One is
mm,
securing our agricultural communities, right? The United States, ironically, is a massive exporter of food, right? We feed a lot of other countries. We have a massive grain supply here, kind of what Ukraine is to the Middle East, as we are to many other countries as well. But the problem is that we are not encouraging farmers to domestically produce food and sell it here because they don't make any money, right? They actually make more money selling their food to China than they would
We're
selling
the
it in the United
same.
States,
Yeah,
right?
we're the
So
same. Yeah.
so we need to bring back more benefits to the American farmer. We also need to encourage American farmers to want to continue being farmers. The problem is what I see out here in Colorado, especially, I'll just use an example. Old man Johnson, who's been running this family farm for 150 years, but now his kids see that they can't make any money off this and they go into business. And when that old man dies, they're going to sell the family farm that's been there for 150 years and get rid of all that land and just sprawl it into urban development, right? So there needs to be better programs here in the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and I think Trump is definitely going to be doing this, where we can lower the cost of food to Americans and lower the cost of fuel by bringing back more drilling and fracking here in the United States. That's one of his big initiatives to pay off the national debt, is to increase our energy production and to become the number one dominant energy producer. Because we send a lot of our natural gas to Scotland. I know that for sure. We have a massive LNG facility in Louisiana, and we help our partners up there in Europe to supply themselves with energy as well. But that's what we have to do. We need to encourage good blue collar American workers that it is okay to be a farmer and to be a plumber and to be an electrician and a welder, because you can make just as much money as these white collar jobs. And I think a lot of people are realizing that. So reinvigorating that sense of Western Americanism, the cowboy hats and cowboy boots that we're famous for, so to speak. When everyone thinks of Americans, that's what they think of for some reason. We need to encourage that type of lifestyle, the frontiersman, because that's what made America. That's what's going to make America great again. And that's also what's going to lower the price of food and lower inflation, is using our domestic resources to make our country better and not extorting any other avenues through that. So.
And President Trump, he used to always say at these MAGA rallies, drill, baby, drill. And
absolutely. I'm so for that. I mean, that's my industry. So I'm very biased, obviously. I fight with green energy, renewable people all the time. Like, I actually posted that small clip from the show Landman here in the United States. There's a show with Billy Bob Thornton, and he's a landman of the guys who go out there and get the drilling contracts, right? And he's out there going like, everything you have, whether it's your cell phone, your lipstick, it's all plastic. It all comes from oil and gas. It costs more money to build this wind turbine that's never going to pay for itself. And then you got to bury the fiberglass blades. And then I posted that on my LinkedIn, and then I think it's an algorithm thing, but all these random green energy people started attacking me about it. And I sat there and just went, well, they're only talking about the cost of electricity. I said, well, it costs less money to produce electricity from a wind turbine. And I said, yes, over the last 20 years, it is technically cheaper now in the United States that wind turbines produce electricity, whether it's a megawatt or whatever it is. However, what they're not talking about is the government subsidies that are paid into those green energy industries to actually lower the costs, and the amount of oil and gas required to manufacture the concrete and the steel and the fiberglass. And then on top of that, the Tesla batteries, the lithium ion, the cobalt mining, you are enslaving tens of thousands of people in Africa working for $1 a day, working in these mines and poisoning them and getting cancer to produce these batteries. Now, is there a way to do it better in the United States with Elon Musk and his gigawatt factory or whatever it is? Sure. Do I think that EVs and electronics and renewables serve a purpose? Absolutely. That is my master's degree. That's my expertise. And microgrids are a really good example of that in Germany, right? Because you can have a small nuclear modular reactor to do the baseload electricity. You can have a combined cycle gas plant in order to produce good heat efficiently so people don't freeze, because batteries don't work well in the cold out here. That I promise you, right? And I think every building should have some type of solar panel array on it, because one, the building already exists, so why not turn your roof into a solar panel? But we don't need to take tens of thousands of acres in Texas to put these giant solar panel farms up that are just not cost effective and killing the wildlife and killing all the birds with the wind turbines, right? So green energy does serve a purpose as a part of the solution to the energy demands of humans, but it can't be the only thing. It can't just be oil and gas, and it can't just be green energy. There has to be a common sense approach to combine energy resources together in order to make the most environmentally beneficial, solution that also provides clean power to Americans and people around the world without destroying our environment. And the technology in oil and gas has rapidly increased over the years, and so has EVs. And like I said, it's a common sense solution. Like, EVs are great for cities. They are terrible for where I live. I need my diesel farm truck out here to get around and do things. I live very far away from the nearest fuel station, right? So there are no EV chargers out here. The Biden administration spent $8 billion to build charging stations, and they built 4, and 2 of them don't work, right? So it doesn't make any sense, right? So there needs to be this conversation of, it can't just be either or, the Green Party versus the hardcore oil and gas people. My solution to that is I think they need to bring back nuclear power. France is a great example. 80% of France's energy is produced by nuclear power, and they've actually spent the $1 trillion required to develop a nuclear rod recycling facility where they can make more nuclear rods out of their old wasteful fuel. We don't do that in the United States because it's too expensive. We just store it all on site. But, that's an initiative we can bring back. So nuclear power is definitely, especially with the new technologies, with these much smaller reactors, we don't need these giant Chernobyl-sized plants anymore. But yeah, oil and gas isn't going away. This cell phone's made out of plastic. This coffee cup's made out of petroleum. This microphone I'm talking at is made out of petroleum. It's not made out of hopes and dreams with solar panels and wind turbines. So.
No, and I'm with you on that. It's here in Ireland. You drive anywhere, and all you see is the windmills and the wind farms, and it's crazy. And in Ireland, we pay far more than any other European country for our electricity and our fuel.
Right, because you're forced to do it, right? you're forced to use green energy and you're forced to pay these higher rates because they're telling you that this is the future. It's part of the future, but it's not the actual answer. And actually, the biggest predictor of reducing poverty in the world is access to energy, right? And Haiti and the Dominican Republic is a perfect example of this, right? If you look at a satellite photo on Google Earth right now, it's the same island and it's cut by a straight line in the middle. Haiti is a massive cesspool of human destruction because they don't have access to energy. So because humans need energy to survive, right? And the more energy you have access to, the wealthier you are, the better quality of life, the more children you're going to have. And it actually increases the birth rate, right? That is a scientific statistical fact, right? And Haiti, they're eating each other. Literally, there's cannibalism going on there because they have to cut down all of their forests and burn down all of their trees for fuel because they don't have any source of energy, right? And solar panels aren't going to fix it in Haiti either because you don't have the land mass for the amount of energy required on an island nation, right? So now go across the line to the Dominican Republic. They have a liquid natural gas program with the United States where a ship comes in weekly and everyone has access to propane for their heat and their cooking fuel. And they have thriving rainforests. They have a thriving ecosystem. They're not subjected to massive mudslides and human destruction and natural disasters because they have the vegetation to absorb the water from the rainfall. Whether as you go to Haiti, there's mudslides, there's environmental destruction, there's no water sanitation because they can't treat their water. So the best predictor of human performance is actually access to energy. And more countries with easier and cheaper access to energy have a higher birth rate. Like I said, they have lower poverty and they much more human sustainability and lower carbon emissions overall, right? It's ironic, but people don't want to talk about that. But it's the best predictor of human success is access to energy.
I'd be every time Paul and I speak to you, I'd be completely amazed. And I go off and go, it's so informative. You're just, you're like Google with all this information that you just have off the tip of your tongue. And that's why I love Americans. Americans are just great communicators and they just say it as it is. And I think that's why too, American people love Donald Trump because he had that, as you talk about New York, they say he had that New York personality.
He does. Like I said, as someone who was born in New York, I understand that personality. And like I said, people in Texas don't take too kindly to it, but get over it. You know what I mean? I think our government has wasted enough of its time with the lies coming from our politicians and swindling of Americans and lying to our allies overseas. And we need somebody from New York to come in and clean house, say it how it is, and just shut up and do what you're told because we need to stop wasting money. We need to stop the human suffering. We need to stop the inflation, and we need to heal all of our relationships with our Western allies and our European allies in order to make the world a safer place to be, to reduce the risk of nuclear war, and to end these massive human travesties going on in Africa and the Middle East and in Ukraine right now, right? If we don't have somebody to come in and cut the BS, it's only going to get worse. And I don't think the world is ready for World War III. And I hope to God that Trump can come in and end the war in Ukraine and end the war in Israel and actually start working together to make a more productive human society.
And also at the same time, as the slogan goes, make America great again and make America where people are employment and the cost of living and family life, family values, all back to basics again. I actually wish we had somebody like Trump here in Ireland. I think we sort of secretly do, but they keep in the background. But I would say as soon as Trump got elected, he was on that midnight plane over to Mar-a-Lago making business deals, I hope. And I would say he is. But I just think I know for me personally, I am now missing the MAGA rallies. So I can imagine what the Americans are wanting, because I do think now I'm saying something very controversial to a lot of our Irish audience, but they know where I stand. They always did know where I stand. Paul, you always knew where I stood.
Yeah.
We do need that MAGA attitude back here in Ireland. And that's what Ireland needs. We need leadership like that. We need that, as Rachel Right Side Blonde and Vincent said, Trump force. We need something like that here in Ireland. Especially now we're coming up to our general election here on Friday. And Paul and I, as we said, will be covering it live on the Irish Political Roundup. But there was something I tweeted. I was talking last night with our women's view, our Irish women's view, and I said on it that the one thing I'm looking for in the next general election, imagine we have a general election now on Friday, but there's nothing in it for women's rights, children's rights, or family values. I'm looking for a mandate for women, children, and family values in that. And I'm going to have to wait until 2028, 29 for that to happen, if that's going to
Well,
happen.
I'd like to say all of our countries were founded on Judeo-Christian values, whether people want to admit it or not. And there's a reason why Western societies who abide by Judeo-Christian values and common law and constitutional rights are surviving and thriving in this world. It's because we just know how to do it best. We know how to treat people the best. We know how to raise families the best. And yes, you are 100% correct, is that I don't understand why people would continue to vote for things that have failed them for the past 20 years, right? Hey, we gave them a shot. Hey, the Democrats came in, or the liberals came in, the Green Party came in, all these renewable, the Greta Thunbergs of the world. You had your shot, and you want to know what? Everything is worse. So you want to know what? Maybe we need to go back to our basic roots and the foundations of our countries and our principles and our common law that, encouraged my grandfathers and my grandmothers to raise a family and work in a business and raise ethical and moral families, because you want to know what? That's what created our country. So probably we should go back to doing that. We gave them a shot. They failed. Sorry, try again. But, combat is not fair. It's survival of the fittest, and my fist is the biggest, so to speak. And that's just the way it is.
So I suppose what I'm also looking for with Trump being inauguration in January, and then hopefully that that will trickle over here, over the pond, over the Atlantic Ocean to Ireland and the rest of Europe about family values, women's rights, and the protection of children, which has been very prominent in the Trump campaign as well. That's what I'm hoping for: real family core values and back to basics in life and politics.
I agree. And that's the only way our countries are going to survive, is having those moral, ethical family values reinstituted in our governments and instituted in our communities, where we're not afraid to speak those things and not being shot down for it because of a 0.001% of the population disagrees with us.
Well, Adam, we're coming up to the end of the hour. Have you both of you, Paul or Adam, have you both anything to say to the audience?
No, I said, sorry, Adam, I'll let you go.
No. I was just going to say,
You're
thank you so much for letting me come on the podcast again. I love talking with you guys. I love having this transparency between our countries. And if people want to follow me, my biggest thing is on Instagram. You can just adam.DeRito2010. You can send me any questions there. You can shoot me an email or whatever. And I'm glad to help talk about these issues with whoever wants to talk about them. So.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And Adam, I just like to echo what Roisin said. Thanks a million for coming on the program. And I always come away with lots of different things from speaking to you. So and in fairness to you, I think I said this to you, Roisin, you're very, very good at putting it in a way that everybody can understand, and I think that's a brilliant skill to have. So I'd say thanks a million for taking the time to chat with us here in the Irish Political Roundup.
And you're now part of the Irish Political Roundup team. We're claiming you as part of the team.
Well, I'm Irish, so it's fine. It's okay.
Yeah.
Genetically, I belong to you. So.
Our Irish American correspondent, and it's also really, really good. And what I really see at the potential of is explaining to the Irish audience, and not through the mainstream media, but through this podcast, explaining what is really going on within the Trump administration. And even though you're not in the Trump administration, you are a commentator and you're on the ground and you understand what's going on, and explaining it to the Irish audience.
No, I appreciate it. To be fair, I did apply to the Trump administration. I was asked to apply, so we'll see if I get the job, but it's like a 1 in a million shot. But yeah, I applied for the Senior Oil and Gas Advisor Director for the EPA, and then I also applied for the Water and Western Issues position for the Department of Interior here in Colorado. So I don't know. It's a 1 in a million shot, but I was asked to apply, so I applied, and we'll see what happens.
Okay.
Oh, that would be brilliant. And please pass on apologies for how your friend who worked for Apple, how she was treated. I'm really sorry that she had that experience. That is certainly not a cave me a vulture.
Oh no, it's fine. But like I said, it's important to talk about these issues, right?
Yeah.
We want to keep these trade agreements up. we want to be transparent. But yeah, if you want to keep our companies here in Ireland, then just treat us like one of the locals. You don't have to treat us like we're some migrants from Morocco.
No, definitely not. And Adam, happy Thanksgiving for tomorrow. It's tomorrow, isn't it? Happy Thanksgiving to
Yep,
you.
actually, I'm going to go start cooking right after this. I got to get prepped for tomorrow. A big party at the house. So
Brilliant. And how do you celebrate? I know we watched it on the movies. We did a big turkey and a big meal. How do you celebrate Thanksgiving in America, in Colorado?
yeah, traditionally it's turkey, and the best way to cook a turkey is to fry it. I have oven baked it. I have smoked one. I have put them on a grill. But the best way is to take a giant vat of oil and just put that bird in it for a couple hours, and it's delicious. It's absolutely amazing. So seals all the juices in, and then we make mashed potatoes and baked bread, and it's just you have your friends and family over and just be thankful for being in America, and giving homage to our ancestors that worked so hard to build this country, and then what can we do to make sure that we don't destroy it? All the work that my ancestors put into here. So
And how can you make America great again?
exactly.
Robert DeRito, our Irish American correspondent over there in Denver, Colorado. Thank you for taking the time and joining us and explaining to us what is going on in American politics.
Thank you so much.